This is the Soft Power Podcast, episode 13. Hi and welcome. I'm Susan Callender, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's kick off today's episode with a little quiz. What's more likely to prevent you from not getting the raise or the promotion or a call back for a second interview for that dream job? Is it having a messy background in your Zoom meetings? Or maybe your clothing choice? Or it could be your greeting or the first few words you speak, whether it's in person or online. Well, my guest today has all the answers to your questions about how to show up in professional places and make the best possible impression. Charmaine Bryan wrote the definitive book on business attire titled Stop Buying Clothes You Don't Wear, and I think it's a must for anyone who can relate to having overfilled closets and drawers and still waste time trying to find the right outfit. She's a sought-after coach, an award-winning speaker, and the leader of the Show Up and Step Up membership community for mid-level professionals who want and need her guidance to step into leadership roles by learning her proven path to influence and success. Welcome to the Soft Power Podcast, Charmaine.
Hi, Susan. So happy to be here. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm thrilled to have you here. Let's start off with professional image. You are an image consultant. What are the components of a professional image, and why are they important?
Well, Susan, I like to coin it, look the part, speak the part, act the part. And the reason why I coin it in those three areas is because how you look and how you show up is so key to first impressions and ongoing impressions. If you're meeting someone for the first time and you're looking sloppy, someone's already got that impression that that person doesn't look professional, they've made no effort, they don't care. Speaking the part, communication is so key when it comes to meeting people, meeting clients, talking to your boss. These days, speaking online and acting the part. What are you doing in your Zoom meetings? If you don't have that camera on, how are you meant to stand out? How are you meant to be more visible to those people who you want to impress and hope to give you that help up the ladder?
I agree with you, and I like how you keep it so succinct. Look, speak, and act the part, because it's so simple and obvious, but I'm sure that you see and hear about people that aren't doing it. I wouldn't be surprised, Charmaine, if they showed up in your Zoom meetings.
Yes, oh gosh. I have seen so many Zoom meetings where you can't see their faces. Mm-hmm. Their background leads a lot to be desired. And it's just like, how are you meant to show up and stand out if, you're fading to the back of the camera when you're in Zoom? I think people don't take it seriously. And let's face it, remote working is going to be the thing. And Zoom meetings or whatever else that you're on for work, or indeed presenting for your organization, if you don't have that great first impression on camera, then you are stuffed. Who's going to take you seriously?
I agree with you. And what I've seen a lot on Zoom, more so since the pandemic in the spring of 2020, that a lot of people are using artificial backgrounds. And so they're showing up very fuzzy because they haven't worn the proper attire to be in front of that background? Are they using Zoom virtual back? What's happening with that, Charmaine? What is that fuzzy look?
I know, that fuzzy looks crazy because one minute you can see their head and then their arm disappears. And I feel like Zoom do have some good backgrounds, but I think what people don't understand is, sure, use a Zoom background, because who knows, if you've got kids or you don't have that ideal situation where you've got a great spot to have something behind you, a Zoom background's a good idea. I think what people don't then need to take into account of, okay, I've chosen this background, but what am I wearing? Do these colors clash with the background? And I think that's where the issue lies, that, it's really taken into account, well, testing it out before going on camera.
Why do people not do that? Well, pardon me for speaking over you, but why do people assume that they can go on camera, and I assume they think that they look good, but they haven't taken a moment to have somebody else jump on, let's say using their iPhone camera to do a quick video and saying, how do I look? It takes but 30 seconds to shoot that, so that you show up with your colleagues or your clients looking good.
I know. I mean, and I think, unfortunately, I think because we are working from home, some people aren't taking that as seriously as they should do. And I get it. I mean, certainly it is also about being authentic. You don't know, you are working at home, you may have family members pass by, you may have your kids come in, and people do understand that. I mean, and of course there are factors there that sometimes they're not necessarily within your control. But however, it is about putting things into place that are in control, so that when you do show up and these mishaps happen, and let's face it, they happen to all of us at some point.
They do.
You are still being taken seriously.
And people appreciate when you've made an effort, and things may go awry, but when you've made that effort to show up and step up and look good and be professional, people will appreciate that. When you show that you didn't really care, that you didn't really try, that's when you can get in trouble. Would you agree with that?
I do. And you just saying that, I remember the story. I think it was a lawyer they were on Zoom and they were presenting on Zoom in court, and I think this lawyer pretty much just stayed in bed. Couldn't even be bothered to get out of bed. I don't know if you heard of that story.
I haven't heard that one.
And the judge basically said, look, you need to get dressed and be professional in my courtroom, even if it is on Zoom. But I can't believe that someone had the audacity to try and present a case from bed.
I do. Now that you've stated it that way, Charmaine, I do. And the reason why I believe that, and why I'm not so surprised, is that we have become far too casual, and not enough people are being called out for it. Business should be a place where people show up with a modicum or a certain level, a predefined level of professionalism. So perhaps with that said, the onus is on each organization to set that standard. Yes, the pandemic came about with not a lot of warning, but put together a standard for your staff, pardon me, to show up in online meetings or face-to-face meetings. But this is what you must do in order to represent this particular organization. That would go a long way.
I agree. And I think we are months into the pandemic now. So I guess at the beginning, I think, companies didn't know what to do. It was kind of anything goes. We're just surviving at this point. But I think now that we're months into it and long term,
no more excuses.
Yeah, this is it. Long term, you do need to, as you said, set that protocol, set that etiquette of what they expect from their employees, and not even just how they dress, how they are actually communicating on camera. Sound enthusiastic. like you want to be there. You know, if you're yawning in meetings, that's not a good look.
Or looking at your phone. People can see your eyes, going up and down, or just reading something that's, perhaps not in the view of your camera, but it's no different than sitting across from them at a conference table. People know when, if you are looking below the edge of the table, they know you're looking at your phone. And they know the same thing on camera. So people don't do that, or don't have this faraway gaze that we assume to be a TV in the corner of your room. It's not difficult to do. Just think about how people see you, because as we know, perception is reality. And if we assume you're not paying attention, and another person who may not have your skills or your background or knowledge, they will get everything that you want because they showed up, professionally. That's all we want. A little bit of professionalism in our interactions. So tell me this. I have a question. I love the title of your book, Stop Buying Clothes You Don't Wear. It reminds me of a story that I heard some years ago, but it makes sense. And it has to do with stores like H&M or Zara, where the clothing is so inexpensive that you can't help but go in and buy that $10 top or that $20 skirt, and you get it home. And it doesn't look that good, but you still keep it in your closet. And you get to the point where you have so much and nothing to wear. How many pieces do you think a person should have in their closet and still be able to dress well?
I say it all depends on, what that person's lifestyle is. It always goes back to that. So I don't think there is necessarily a magic number of pieces that someone needs, because it depends on what. Certainly, back to the point of us working from home nowadays, the wardrobe that we had when we were going into the office, or just being out and about in general, is certainly different to what we need working from home now. So it's taking that into consideration. But that doesn't mean that you sit in your pajamas all day either. So I think I am very much about, well, what is my lifestyle? How many hours am I doing a certain activities a week? And then that's what you're basing your wardrobe on. So if you're nowadays we're spending most of our times at home. So it's really just having those few key pieces for your Zoom meetings when you're going to be on camera. I doubt you're probably going to have all those fancy outfits to go out to dances and dinners and concerts, because we're not going out to them anymore. I'm not saying get rid of those pieces, because of course we are hoping that we will go back to a time when we can go out and socialize again like that. Yes. But it's just keeping it into perspective here that if you are spending less time doing certain things, then you don't need so many pieces to support those fewer activities. So most people generally have more clothes in their closet for work, because that's where we spend a lot of our time. That's where you focus most of your closet. And then you think about other activities that you're doing in your day-to-day life.
Let's say that women tend to have fuller closets than men, even though I've heard that men have very full closets as well. When we are working more in a virtual environment, do you think perhaps you need a 2-week rotation of different outfits? Do you think it can be the same thing every day because people may not notice? Or do you think that it just really depends on who you're working with, who you're meeting with, and then use that as your determining factor?
You spot on. I think it is who you're working a meeting with. Mm-hmm. I think that more than anything else, especially if it is somebody that, could make a difference for you in your organization.
True.
If it's a decision maker and, you're thinking about your next career advancement, if you're moving up the ladder,
Yeah.
how you're showing up with that person. You want to make sure that you are showing up in a way that that person is thinking, yep, I could see that this person is representing the organization how I wish, in a higher position. But that's not to say that if you're meeting with your team members, just slack off. That's all you've got to take that into account as well, because people notice what you're doing. People are watching you when you don't think that they are.
That's my feeling as well, Charmaine. And that's why I want to stay on this for a moment, because I have been in countless meetings and trainings that I've led, in a lot of just group meetings, large meetings, where people are dressed so casually, wearing clothing that they would never wear at any other time during the business day. But there's something about being inside their home that tells them that it's okay.
I agree with you. I say the best practice is, even though you are at home, it is still going with the company dress code.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you're saying you're working with organizations where the attire is more formal, when you are having meetings, definitely stick with the more formal look. I mean, whenever I do workshops and I go into organizations, or nowadays it's more webinars, and they're asking me the question about what to wear, I always say, go with the company culture of what your dress code is. Yes, as we both know, we have these different levels of dress, but it is really what your organization is what determines most of it. And then it also takes into account of, we're talking about how are you showing up because
Yes.
you want to step up. It's also that, okay, I'm at a certain level, but how am I going to show that I can represent my organization at a higher level? So yes, you can feel that I'm at this particular level now, but maybe it is that you are stepping up a bit more in how you look, to show them what you're capable of. And whether we like it or not, our looks are very much, how we dress is very much a first impression. And that's something I learned early on in my career that nobody told me. And it was only by observing others and those who got ahead quicker than I did that I realized how important it was.
Mm-hmm. It's so true. It's so true. Tell me this, for those who are no longer working at home, but they're back at the office, we can all attest to the fact that the streets are much busier now as we are recording this in July of 2020 than they were a month or two ago. So people are back in their places of work. What have you seen, or what do you anticipate happening in the way that we greet people when it comes to the handshake, elbow bump, the fist bump, just the nice big smile? What are your thoughts on it?
We are still in a pandemic, and yes, we're back at work. And it's funny because before all this hit, when I was writing a special report on, how to act and how to greet people in business situations. And the handshake was my number one number one on my list. And you know what, once it struck, I had to, I took it out,
Yeah.
because we are, of course, not encouraging touch nowadays. But I think, you said it, the last thing you said about smiling, I think, it's always been a great way to greet people. So I
Mm-hmm.
think you can do that from a distance. So absolutely, that is something that I would tell people to do, to greet people.
What I have been doing since this all started, is particularly when face masks became mandatory, is I make sure that my smile includes like a crinkle around the eyes. Not that I want to add wrinkles to my face, but when the majority or half of your face is covered with a mask, giving a smile that allows your eyes to crinkle in the corners is, to me, is now the greeting. So making sure that you make eye contact with people and doing that. And So what is the point of touching? Perhaps there was a little too much hugging unnecessarily in business. We're talking about professional image today. I think that could be an answer. And we'll see what happens with that handshake if it comes back, and then you can write a book about it.
I do like the smile with the crinkle in the eye.
I'll give you that one. Credit me 3 times and you can have it, okay? So tell me, Charmaine, tell me some common mistakes you've heard or seen from professionals and what they can do to start rectifying their ruined reputation, if it's been ruined. Forget about COVID and the pandemic. This soon shall pass. What can people do to allow their degrees and their credentials and their skills and the experience to allow all of that to speak for them without making common mistakes that they don't see as being common mistakes that hold them back?
Unfortunately, there are things that people, you are blind to some of your mistakes unless someone gives you that healthy dose of constructive criticism, I like to say. I think a lot of people, whatever time that we're in, is that they don't take seriously listening as a communication skill. We talk about showing up and putting ourselves out there. So, a lot of people think, oh, that's being extroverted and really, really being loud. But I think what people really don't actually take into consideration sometimes is being a great listener is such a top communication skill.
Truly.
And I think so many people underestimate that. And I think that's what a lot of people make mistakes. They want to be so quick to get their point across or be thinking about what to say next that they're not listening. And that's something that I tell my clients all the time. If you want to become a better communicator, become an even better listener.
That is so true. You've caused me to think about personal branding, and that is one of my favorite topics in this world of professional presence, because how you show up in one place is how you show up everywhere. And having that consistency of if you're a good listener in one place, you will be a good listener in another. So if you find yourself not hearing what people say or having people feel that you're not in tune to what it is that they're trying to express, or what are the other areas of personal branding or making this definitive statement of this is who I am and how I show up in life and business? What are some other areas that people could stand to hear some great tips about?
Yes, some other areas I always like to talk about with clients, and in fact really putting together in my new membership, Show Up and Step Up, is really about building visibility for themselves. People, as you said, they gain great qualifications, they're in their jobs, they're doing a good job. But I think what a lot of people don't seem to realize is that, number one, doing a good job's a minimum requirement. That's why you're there. And they think, if I just do a good job, if I work really hard, then I'm going to be, I will be rewarded. And a lot of the time, that's not the case. And I think a lot of people don't take the time to make themselves more visible in their organizations. It's keep your head down, get the job done. But actually, a lot of it is about networking with people within your organization, whether that's decision makers, whether that's other people in other teams. And I think, we focus a lot on, in terms of our weaknesses and what we're missing. And I definitely think about, yes, it is about thinking about those weaknesses and what we could do to develop those to become better. But I think what many people don't do is actually, this is a strength of mine. How can I really make this strength work for me? How can I make this a superpower while I'm in the business world? And I think a lot of people don't necessarily take that into account. And going back to being more visible, thinking about what you're really great at to put together a visibility strategy. For example, maybe if I talked about networking, maybe helping out and using your great skill sets in another team. That's a really good way to become more visible to others that you're not necessarily would be ordinarily in your day-to-day.
That is such a great point, Charmaine. I think that so many people don't even know people that work in their organization outside of their team. They are in their silos. They keep their heads down. They have their headphones in. They don't greet people that work on another floor or are on the elevator with them or waiting for the elevator or all these things. And those are the same people that you want to be able to connect with. Those are the people that probably have what you want or can connect you to the people that have what you want, but you're not networking within. And that's so important. You are such a professional presence pro. I have to ask, what was your career before you got into image consulting? And what was the spark that put you on this path to be all consuming in all these areas that we've discussed so far?
Oh gosh, when you say what was my career, what wasn't my career? I mean, I've done several things. I mean, most recently, I've worked in the non-profit world for the last, gosh, how many, 8 years,
Mhm.
and that was I've worked in the arts. So, I've done all kinds of things like grant writing and getting sponsorship for non-profits, which certainly was a new area for me. But again, it's making those connections, networking, getting to know people. And before that, I spent a long time working in education administration. Back home in the UK, I started out in government, like for a government body where I worked very much on developing curriculum and qualification across England and Wales. And then I also went on to delivering a lot of those programs that I created at government level, that I went on to work in school boards and colleges. And then when I moved to Canada, I worked for an education nonprofit for a few years. So I guess the reason it seemed like a great idea to move into image consulting is because I think I worked in education for so long.
Mhm.
And, I get to use my skill set of educating people and developing people that I think is really something that I've always been passionate about. So for me, when it came to image consulting, it wasn't, funnily enough, whenever anyone asks me about how I got into image consulting, it wasn't a decision of, I'm going to become an image consultant one
Mhm.
day. It came about where I purely decided to take a course at a college here in Toronto on style, because I'd always been complimented on how I put together outfits. And I thought,
Mhm.
oh, let me do something for fun. I've
Yes.
done all this professional development. Let me just do something for fun. And that then turned into a certificate, and then it turned into starting a business.
And I think it's wonderful and amazing that you have managed in the time since you've moved to Canada to create a following, and you now have a membership community that's designed to help you'll help mid-level professionals, is it, step up and show up?
Yes.
So are there specific areas that you'll focus on with your members, that you'll take them through on their journey from where they are when they first go into step up and show up to where they want to be?
Yes, I do. It's 5 steps, and they are: be aware, be visible, be credible, be influential, be elevated.
So what should you be aware of?
Well, it's when you're coming in. And I touched on this earlier, where I spoke about, knowing what your weaknesses are and developing your strengths. But when you become aware, it's knowing, okay, I know that I want to step up in my career, but what can I do? What are the skill set that I should be working on? What can I be doing? So that being aware is, so then members really thinking about, okay, this is what I want to do. These are the skills I want to develop, and actually setting goals that are timely, because you know how it is. You know that you want to do something, but unless you actually set goals and put a plan in place, then it is not going to happen. So that is the first step that we talk about.
That is very true. Within that membership time, you said the steps were be aware, be visible, be credible. Okay. Be influential. So showing up in a way that shows that you have authority in what you do.
Yes, absolutely.
Excellent.
Because when you want to get into those leadership positions, you want to show them that you do have the credibility, that you can be influential, whether that is to team members, whether that's when you're talking to clients on behalf of the organization.
This sounds amazing. I am going to include the links to have the Soft Power Society people find you and join your membership. I think it sounds wonderful. Charmaine, thanks so much for joining me today. You can find Charmaine's book, Stop Buying Clothes You Don't Wear, on Amazon, and her website, charmainebryan.com. I will include a link in the show notes. Soft Power Society. What's your greatest interpersonal or people skills challenge? Do you hesitate when it's your turn to speak up in meetings, or do you let the outspoken and sometimes loud extroverts overshadow you? If that's the case, I'm inviting you to join the Introvert to Influencer Facebook group. It's specifically for people like you who are tired of playing small and you're finally ready to step in from the sidelines and get into the game. Just type Introvert to Influencer in the top search bar on Facebook. We'd love to have you. Thanks so much for joining me today. Bye for now.